Hi, my name is Dr. Homiar Mopichi, and I represent Benetech. Welcome to this show. I am based out of India, and I represent Benetech for Asia and Africa, and mainly look after its flagship program, Bookshare. So what is Bookshare? Bookshare is the world's largest online library, specifically meant for people with print disabilities. Print disabilities means an individual who cannot hold or turn a page of a book would generally be constituted as a print disabled person. For example, he could be blind, he could be a person with low vision or some learning disability like dyslexia, or he could have some challenges in the hand where he's not able to hold or turn a page of a book. So all these people can become members of Bookshare and access our content in an accessible format. What is accessible formats? So basically, when people try to read, especially with assistive technology, they would require materials in a slightly altered format. And these could be formats like EPUB or DAISY or Word or BRF, that's the Braille Ready format. Depending upon your choice, depending upon your disability, you could choose a format from Bookshare and read the books virtually the same way as a person with sight would be doing it. So what does Bookshare do in the developing world? Because I represent the developing world based out of India and having worked in many developing countries, I'll be mainly focusing and sharing my experience of the developing countries. So to start with, we need to understand the ground reality in these developing countries, and specifically for people with blindness and low vision. It is true that less than 1% of the total printed materials, total published material is available in accessible formats in the developing countries. Imagine a student going to a school not having access to his textbooks in a format that he can read. Imagine a college-going student sitting in a classroom without any materials to refer. So these are the typical type of barriers that you would see in a developing country. There are many reasons for that. Lack of content is one of the major reasons, because content creation in spatial formats such as Braille is very expensive. Spatial formats such as Braille or audiobooks take a long time to create. And they are extremely fragile. As we all know, Braille is very delicate. It gets damaged very quickly. So this is one of the main reasons why content is in great scarcity. Another reason would be delivery mechanisms in a large country like India, with many persons with blindness and print disability located in rural areas. It's very difficult to reach them. It's very difficult to send these large, bulky Braille books to them. And hence, delivery is also a challenge. The third major aspect is the training aspect. How do people read? You need to train people to read Braille because it's a specialized format. So in these rural setups, in the remote setups, when we do not have special educators, when we do not have people trained enough to help these people, even if they have access to materials, they will not be able to read them. So keeping all these three major issues in mind, Bookshare set out to provide access to knowledge for these print disabled individuals in the developing countries using technology. Technology today is one of the biggest levelers, if we can say, or game changers, if we can say. Technology has enabled us to read and write virtually like a person without disability. So technology has revolutionized how we read, how we gain access to knowledge. When we talk about technology, we're not talking about high-end, very expensive pieces of technology. We are talking about affordable technology. Because we are talking about developing countries, we have to be creative. We have to be working with solutions which are mainstream and which are available everywhere. Hence, we are talking about solutions like the Android phone, which is probably one of the most affordable pieces of technology one can have as a print-disabled individual. So what Bookshare has been doing in the developing countries is working on three distinct principles: content, device, and training. As I said, Bookshare is the largest provider of accessible content in the world, with an access to more than 960,000, that's 960,000 accessible titles as we speak today. And we keep on adding roughly 8,000 to 10,000 titles every month. So our collection keeps on growing. So that means the accessible content keeps on growing. This content is available in more than 35 languages, and it spreads across 50 different categories. So it's a huge collection for people who want to read. It spans from textbooks to reference books to leisure reading books to books on history, geography, medicine, art, architecture, science, you name it, we have it. But by only creating content, it's not going to solve the problem. This content has to be delivered to the person. Hence, devices are important. And as I said, Android is the most affordable and one of the most accessible pieces of technology which is available today. So we work with partners in the developing countries, partners who fund devices. These could be philanthropic organizations, this could be government agencies. So these government agencies and organizations would donate Android phones or provide it to the end users at subsidized costs. So that solves the second problem. But that still leaves the most important problem, and that is training. How to use an Android device to read the content. So this is also what Bookshare does. Again, in partnership with our partners on the ground, we train people in the use of these Android devices and train them, show them how to read content on their devices. So in a nutshell, what we have been doing up till now is provide an end-to-end solution. We created content, we provided or helped provide devices, and we also provided training for the use of these devices. But then, as we all know, came COVID, came a major disruption to our lives, and this changed everything. It changed lives in developed countries. It changed lives in developing countries. It changed lives everywhere. And more so for people with disability. Because they lost the connection. Prior to COVID, Bookshare used to engage with our users. We used to travel to various destinations, to organizations, and conduct a lot of person-to-person workshops, seminars, and we provided all these trainings that I talked about. But come COVID, all that had to stop. We could not travel, nobody could travel, and hence we had to innovate again and come out with a different solution to reach the unreached. So again, technology came to our rescue. Technology was suddenly accepted by persons with blindness and print disability. Prior to COVID, there was a lot of reluctance in shifting from traditional ways of reading like braille and audio to digital reading. But come COVID, there was no alternative. People had to be connected. People wanted to be connected. And the only way to be connected was using digital means. So suddenly there was an uptick in digital tools. But then these tools were available with the user through their families, but then still they could not use them because they did not have the right training to use it. So as I said, Bookshare team started innovating, started changing their approach, and we went online. Since February 20, we started a series of weekly workshops, broadcast over Zoom and also broadcast live on YouTube, on our India Bookshare YouTube channel. So we started with basic workshops. We started with how to log into Zoom. We started with that level of simplicity. How would you connect to a Zoom meeting? How would you listen to a presentation? So these are the type of sessions that we had to start with. We had to educate people. And even before we started our Zoom sessions, we even created some small audio tutorials and sent them out on WhatsApp groups. Because in India, one thing is for sure, most of the blind are connected through WhatsApp using the Android devices. They might not use the device extensively for anything else, but they would definitely use it for WhatsApp. And they were pretty good with sending voice messages and listening to voice messages. In India, there are more than 100 plus groups of visually impaired. So these are groups of 200 plus members in a particular group. So we joined these groups as Bookshare and sent out our preliminary messages within these groups to spread awareness about how to log into our sessions and how to use Zoom and how to log into Bookshare's YouTube channels and all that. Slowly, people started logging in. Slowly, people started catching up with us. And over a period of about 12 months or so, we were able to reach more than 15,000 unique participants through our programs. Every week at 11 o'clock India time, we had these programs. And these programs would last generally for 2.5 hours, depending upon the topic that we cover. So we started with how to read initially on Android phones. Then we started expanding the topics to how to read on Windows-based computers. Then we went on keeping the trend, how to read and write using an Android phone. Because if you have an Android phone, reading is fine, but writing has always been a challenge. So we conducted programs on how to write use by attaching a simple USB keyboard to your Android phone and making it into a mini laptop. So then people started realizing, oh, and now we can read and write using our phones. So then we expanded the horizon. We talked about employability amongst the blind, because if you do not have the right skill sets, you cannot be employed. And to get skill sets, you need to read and write efficiently like any other sighted person would be doing. So we had a focus series on employability. Then we had a series on using different applications, power applications on Android. So you might be wondering, why are we doing all this? We are Bookshare. We should only be talking about reading or reading books. But if you look at it from a different perspective, all these are connected issues. When we talk about knowledge, when we talk about employability, when we talk about skilling, all these are connected dots. One leads to the other. If you cannot read or write, you cannot become employable. If you cannot become employable, you don't get jobs. That means you get education, but you still remain unemployable. So to tackle that problem, we went backwards and we started encouraging people to read and write. So ultimately, when people read, we pointed them to Bookshare, the largest resource of reading materials. So in a nutshell, these series of workshops that we did became so popular. So people started coming back to us and asking for more and more. In India, initially we had one helpline from Bookshare. So we had a dedicated number on which people could call us. But with these workshops going on every week, suddenly we saw a huge upsurge in the number of people that used to call us. Hence, we had to expand our peripheral services. We had to expand our helplines from 1 to 2 and then from 2 to 3. Currently, we are running 3 dedicated numbers as helplines, which open at 9 a.m. in the morning and close at 7 p.m. in the evening, 7 days a week. And all the 3 lines keep on constantly ringing during the day. People keep on asking us different questions, not just how to become a member of Bookshare, how to download a book or how to read a particular book or with a particular application, but they might come and ask us about different challenges of using Android phones and whatnot. And we are happy to help them. Why are we happy? Again, we want our readers to be connected with us, not just because of Bookshare, but we want them to become power users. We want them to become a user who can stand up in the society and live a life of dignity. And that's been our mission throughout. Because unless you empower a person, unless you help the person grow, just by pointing him to a book is not going to be sufficient. The person has to improve or change to fit the expectations of the society. A society has a typical imagination of a person with blindness. They always consider them to be dependent. They always consider them to be less qualified or less equipped or less skilled. We are wanting to change this situation. We are wanting that this image of a person with blindness should change in today's world. And in order to do so, we have to have an overall program where we have to empower the person 360. And that is the reason why we kept on evolving our programs, which started from just reading a book to today, we are considered to be an authority in India when it comes to persons with blindness. Before I end, I'll just talk about our latest drive in India. Today, we are working with the special schools directly, the blind schools as they are called. And we are helping them transform from traditional centers of learning into centers of digital literacy. So why are we doing that? Because students who study in these blind schools were traditionally taught using traditional means of reading and writing, and that is Braille and audio. Now, as I said in the very beginning, Braille is a fragile medium. And Braille is also a very exclusive medium for the blind. When one writes or reads and writes using Braille, only a person who knows Braille would be able to understand that script. So you're not writing in the mainstream script. So when these children come out of these blind schools, come out of these special schools, and go into the mainstream society, start going into mainstream colleges, they are finding it very difficult to be accepted because they are not using the mainstream ways of reading and writing. Now, this has been found to be one of the major reasons of these students coming from these special schools not being employable. And that is the reason we started working backwards. We said, let's empower these schools. Let's help these traditional centers of learning embrace digital technology. So what we do is go into schools, train the teachers in the use of digital tools, train the students in the use of digital tools, enforce upon the management the importance of digital reading and writing, help the management connect them to donors and get them grants for getting their classes digitally equipped. So transform the entire ecosystem within these schools. So this transformation generally would take about 3 years to bear us fruits. So within the next 3 years, we should see these new centers of learning where students would be able to write and read digitally. And when they come out of these centers, they should be very well prepared for being accepted in the mainstream society. Again, a very different approach, which will lead to empowerment, which will lead to acceptance of a person with blindness as a contributing citizen of the society, not as a dependent person of the society. So this is what we do as a team in the developing countries. I mentioned India, but these programs are also being duplicated across the developing South, in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, Malawi. All these countries have been slowly moving in this direction. We are open for any further information. Please feel free to write to us on the numbers on the screen, reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to support. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the opportunity.